Hello, and thank you for joining me today for a brief explanation of the difference between an SAQ and a ROC in the context of PCI DSS compliance. My name is Brian Carey, and I'm a Senior Security Consultant with GraVoc and a PCI Qualified Security Assessor. Today, I want to briefly walk you through the methods for complying with PCI DSS, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. PCI DSS is a globally recognized set of security requirements designed to protect cardholder data and reduce the risk of fraud. It applies to any organization that stores, processes, or transmits payment card information and establishes expectations for securing systems, controlling access, monitoring activity, and safeguarding sensitive cardholder data. The standard itself is organized into 12 core requirements, which are grouped into areas such as building and maintaining secure networks, protecting cardholder data, implementing strong access controls, the regular monitoring and testing of systems, and maintaining an information security policy. Because PCI applies to every organization that comes into contact with cardholder data, from the Amazons and Walmarts of the world to the smallest mom and pop shop, there are different expectations based on your own size and complexity. Certainly, the requirements that would be applicable to a Walmart are not necessarily going to apply to your local coffee shop. The two methods of attestation to the PCI requirements are a report on compliance, often called a ROC, and a self-assessment questionnaire, or SAQ. At a high level, both a ROC and an SAQ are ways that an organization demonstrates compliance with the requirements of PCI DSS. The difference really comes down to who performs the assessment, the level of rigor, really based on the complexity of the environment. A ROC is a formal, independent assessment performed by a qualified security assessor, or QSA. It is the most comprehensive validation method and results in a detailed report that evaluates every applicable PCI requirement. This is typically required for level 1 merchants or service providers and for organizations with more complex or higher risk environments. An SAQ, on the other hand, is a self-attestation. The organization evaluates itself against a subset, or sometimes all, of the PCI requirements, depending on the type of SAQ. These are generally used by smaller or less complex environments, such as organizations that fully outsource payment processing or have very limited exposure to cardholder data. So why does all this matter? It matters because choosing the wrong validation method can lead to false assumptions about compliance, which is something we see quite often. A business might believe that they are compliant because they completed an SAQ, when in reality their environment actually requires a ROC, or at least a more comprehensive SAQ. It also matters from a risk and credibility perspective. A ROC provides a much higher level of assurance, not just to regulators, but also to partners, customers, and acquiring banks. It demonstrates that controls have been independently tested, not just self-reported. Now, there are a few common misconceptions and mistakes that we see in practice. One of the biggest is, well, we use a third-party payment processor, so we're out of scope for PCI. In reality, even if payments are outsourced, systems that touch, transmit, or can impact cardholder data may still be in scope. That often shifts an organization into an SAQ A-EP, or even a fuller assessment, rather than the simpler SAQ A that they expected. Another common mistake is, we've always done this SAQ, so we're just going to keep doing it. PCI scope can change over time. New integrations, new tools, or even new analytics platforms can introduce risk and expand scope without the organization even realizing it. And finally, we'll move to a ROC when we're ready. The reality is, this requirement isn't optional. It's driven by transaction volume, contractual obligations, and risk profile, not just your preference. So let's talk briefly about how each one applies. An SAQ is appropriate when an environment is simple and well-defined, cardholder data is either fully outsourced or heavily segmented, and there are no complex integrations or storage of card data. For example, a retail website that directs all payments to a third-party provider and never touches card data might qualify for an SAQ-A. An e-commerce merchant that processes hundreds of thousands of transactions might qualify to perform an SAQ-D. A ROC is required when the organization stores, processes, or transmits a significant amount of cardholder data. The environment is complex or highly integrated, or there are multiple systems or third-party connections involved. For example, a merchant processing millions of e-commerce transactions would almost certainly require a ROC. From a real-world perspective, what we often see is that organizations underestimate how easily their scope can expand, especially with modern architectures. And once that happens, the difference between an SAQ and a ROC becomes very significant, not just in effort, but in control expectations, documentation, and testing rigor. And regardless of which method you use, you will require an attestation of compliance, or AOC. This is a separate document and usually the document which you can provide to your external stakeholders. So to wrap up, a ROC and an SAQ are not interchangeable. They represent very different levels of validation and assurance. Understanding which one applies is critical because it directly impacts not only compliance, but also how well the organization is actually managing risk. So at the end of the day, PCI isn't just about checking a box, it's about accurately understanding your environment and ensuring the right controls are in place. I hope this brief explanation has been helpful, and thanks for watching.